Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we finally know what the name of this space is. We found a blueprint for it which must date to around 1988. So, where are we? What is this space? This door through here leads to the Combat Engagement Center, CEC. And originally, on our most recent blueprints, the Booklet of General Plans from around 1983-1984, it lists this space as the CEC admin area. In the ship's current configuration, there's a lot of extra communication equipment in here that makes it not seem like an admin area. So I've always been a little confused by that, and some of the former crew members I talked to said, oh yeah, that was for the flag staff. So New Jersey is modernized around 1988, maybe 1989 at the latest, to be able to accept a flag officer on board. And a number of existing spaces have to be converted to various flag spaces. So like we had to create a new stateroom for them, a new war room. My office was converted into the Admiral's PR staff area. So a number of spaces around the ship get converted for the Admiral's use. And so we've long thought that this space must have been some sort of Admiral space where they're real close to CEC, they're getting all the same information, but they have their own little separate area so they can discuss what they want the fleet to be doing and maybe monitoring the larger fleet stuff as opposed to the just the ship's specific things. So this blueprint lists this space as TFCC, which probably means something like the Tactical Flag Command Center, possibly something like Task Force Control Center, something like that. Midway has a space like this. She, of course, as a large aircraft carrier, would have had flag officers embarked often. She was one of the flagships of the U.S. fleet during the Gulf War. They call theirs the Tactical Flag Command Center. So that's likely what this is. And Midway is decommissioned very close to the Iowa-class battleships. We're both talking about the Gulf War era, so it makes sense that that would be what that space is. Midway's done a great video on this space. We've linked in the comment section down below so you can see the difference between that space on her, which seems to be a suite of spaces and is a little bit bigger than this broom closet. So clearly she had better command and control facilities at that time than we did. She also had NTDS, Navy Tactical Data System, which is pretty important for task force commanders to be able to get the complete picture of the battlefield. The Iowa-class battleships almost certainly never got this full functionality. However, they did have some receive abilities with that through the Link 11, Link 14 system that we have on board, and also through JOTS. Like most other things relating to modernizations on this ship, a plan seems to just be a plan. While most of the original equipment was stripped out of here, this is great as a way of rebuilding the space. It tells us what sort of things are supposed to be in various places around the ship. And most of what you see in here, we managed to strip off of the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy back in 2018. However, a plan is just a plan. Just because it shows up on this sheet doesn't mean that they ever actually installed it. So we're going to look at some of the archaeological evidence in this little shoebox and see if it can prove the equipment that was supposed to be here or disprove it. So, first off, this space's profile seems to be changed slightly from when it was originally used. And that it seems like the door to the space used to be right here, and this area would have come out to a wall. And I have no idea why they would have changed the door here, but that's what the Booklet of General Plans says. It seems like that Booklet of General Plans was originally prepared for Iowa and then modified for New Jersey. We know that Iowa TFCC is still pretty intact to how it would have looked as reactivated around 1984, whereas New Jersey's has had some changes made, particularly for the flag staff here. So it is possible that ours was like this from day one, but the blueprints seem to show this wall coming out further and there being like a door in this space. This entrance, at least as modified here for the diagonal, would have only had a curtain that was drawn across it. And because this is on our regular tour route, it seems like at some point in the past that curtain was removed to make this tour route more logical, but we've replaced it with freezer flaps because of the climate control on the other side of this bulkhead and the fact that the exterior door here is almost always open for our tour route. Now, speaking of tour route modifications, it seems like early on when this was put on the tour route, before I started working here, they made some changes to this space to allow for easier visitor pass-through. So we're going to see some of that as we go through what's on this sheet. And I think that these represent changes that were made by the museum, not Navy changes. When this space was installed, there would have only been a single flag officer and staff who served in here. That would have been Admiral Paul Reason, who was the commander of cruisers and destroyers for the Pacific Fleet. He would have been on here during PACX 8990 and our deployment to the Persian Gulf during the Iran-Iraq tanker war. So, because there's only the one guy here, it's unlikely that the Navy made all that many changes. So, looking at this sheet, it is showing that there should be a chair here and a desk here to mount a JOTS console. And that makes sense. We're seeing all this. We've replaced the JOTS console that should have gone there. The desk is there. It's welded to the deck. So that seems to check out. It also shows that there should be a 25-inch display up here. And I haven't measured this display. It seems to fit pretty closely. It's just an old CRT monitor that we had. And this chair is listed as AFWO, which I imagine means Assistant Fleet Warfare Officer. And it says that that will be a CPO or OS, Chief Petty Officer Operations Specialist. So, makes sense. You've got an area here to write the ship's name, the course, the speed, and it's duplicated so that you can keep track of what you have. That makes sense that it's right here next to the JOTS console where you're getting some of that information. It also says he has a CURTA pad. A CURTA pad is like an early digital thing you can draw on. So I suspect that's what's being projected up on the display screen. So we'll see a couple other CURTA pads and display screens around this space. Interestingly, the blueprint shows this as facing this way, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but clearly based on how this is welded in place, it is facing diagonally. So already there's been some variation to the blueprint. And if that change was made in service, it isn't obvious because of the insulation above it. But oftentimes, like notice how the top part is just bolted on. Oftentimes they would leave the old bolts there and just weld new ones. So the fact that we aren't seeing anything projecting from here tells me that they probably installed this right away. They had the blueprint, it said what they were supposed to put here, and when the shipyard workers actually came up to do it and talk with ship's company, they decided it made more sense to rotate it than to do it as shown. And we see lots of examples of that throughout the ship. The blueprints call for something on paper. It makes sense to have it showing this way, but when you actually get into this space, there's no room to sit behind the screen here because you've got this other display. Interestingly, it does not show any sort of other equipment under it, and that may be because this blocks the view, but it seems to not indicate the radio telephone or this panel right here. A really cool thing on here is this little dotted line that says fold down table. So I've been coming through this ship for years, and there's this weird bar that sticks out here that has some bolt holes in it. There's a desk light right here, and there's a pair of pieces of angle iron, one right here and one here that's been cut off, that show that there used to be something mounted here. And that always confused me because this is where the door is. And this door was not a later addition. In 82, when they reactivate the ship, this door is here. So it's interesting to see that this was supposed to be a fold-down table, and I imagine the legs would have come up and this would have just folded down and sat there. And so what I'm guessing happened, this doesn't seem like the sort of equipment the Navy would take. It seems like that the museum early on removed this and cut off the piece there that would have been a tripping hazard for guests, just to make it easier for people moving through this space. So that is a real interesting find. Honestly, of all the cool stuff on this blueprint that shows us about this space, knowing what this stupid piece of metal was, that was just a regular fold-down table, is probably the thing that excites me the most. Presumably, when the museum made these sorts of changes, they would have photo documented it. Presumably, we have that somewhere. But we've gone through 2 curators since then, so who knows what old Windows XP computer that might have been on, or what floppy disk it might have been saved on back in 2001. That information just hasn't made it down to me. Which is why primary documents like this, combined with the shipboard archaeology, is so exciting. Moving over to here, we have the FWO, which I assume is Fleet Warfare Officer, and AFWO, Assistant, so that would be somebody else like what we had over there. And they just have a pair of 19-inch displays that are supposed to be up here, and looks like RT, Bat Phone, SSRT. So that probably means radio telephones. Radio telephones, SS is probably ship service telephone. And the Bat Phone is probably what they used to call the Admiral. Now, interestingly, looking here, you can see we have 3 radio telephones, no Bat Phone, no ship service telephone. So what I think happened is they didn't have enough space to install everything here like they planned, and so some of it gets put over there, and some of it is this civilian off-the-shelf stuff. So look at this call box. It looks like they bought it like an Office Depot. And this phone over here, these are not standard Navy phones. They are very clearly late 80s, early 90s office-type phones with call buttons. So remember, the ship's original flag spaces are removed. On this ship, when they add the new flag spaces, it seems like they went through and bought everything they needed on land. They didn't use necessarily Navy standard stuff, so they just ran these call buttons to all the various flag spaces with just regular cables and things. And so let's see, this one has the 03 flag bridge, the Halsey stateroom, TFCC, Tactical Flag Command Center. So you would think that that's this space. Number 4 is subplot. That's crossed out. The Admiral's stateroom, the war room, flag admin, flag material, INT, flag intelligence, flag ops, and an off button. So it seems like that they just put those in various places around the ship. And that's really cool, seeing that they grafted this sort of like standard technology onto the old ship. And this space seems to be a lot of that. You've got some of the Navy standard stuff, but then you've got Commodore 64 computers and these standard office call button systems. But it gives the Admiral his own separate circuit away from all the other ship circuits and party lines. Moving around the space from here, you see we have another desk there. This is EWC, which I imagine is Electronic Warfare Center. And this just has an RT, oh, so there it is, radio telephone, and a CurtaPad, and that seems to be all that's at this desk. And then, interestingly, along the back wall right here, it says there should be a chair with CurtaPad, and it's got 2 stars on it. Admiral Reason was a 2-star admiral. 2-star, which would be the sort of people commanding a task force like this. So there should be an admiral's chair right here. And it's significantly bigger than the other chairs displayed, and obviously there's no mounting points on the deck, which is why we've replaced these chair locations with just regular Emeco chairs, the standard 1006 Navy chairs that I love so much. And it has an extra square drawn on it, which I assume is like a fold-down desktop, like the Admiral's chair we saw on USS Little Rock, that probably had the Curta pad mounted on it. Interestingly, like I said, there's no evidence of a chair here, and we removed the rubberized linoleum flooring, and there's no evidence that there had been one welded there that was cut off. So one of two things happened. Either the Admiral ended up with just a regular chair like everybody else had, and that kind of makes sense. The space is so small that he might need to move around some. Or they decided that this space is so small, there's no freaking room for that chair. Actually, the plans do call for a bat phone / ship service telephone. So they mount a radio telephone there, and it looks like there was another phone mounted here at one point that is no longer there. Or, no, never mind. Here you've got steam in and steam out. This used to be a steam radiator. So it looks like that's what was removed from there. So, I don't know, they might have partially installed for an Admiral to be here, but with the board like this, there isn't really anywhere for the Admiral to sit, and he's just in the middle of the space, so the watchstanders can't be here. And is this where the Admiral's going to be in combat? I'm not entirely sure. The ship has a flag bridge. So, I love when we find original documents like this. It answers all sorts of questions, but it leaves us with so many more. And it reminds me why I hate acronyms so much. Have you visited Midway to see her flag spaces that are the same period as ours? We have a trip planned in September of 2024, so I'm excited to go there. It will be my first time visiting her since I started working on New Jersey. She is the last carrier that we haven't filmed on this channel yet. Let us know in the comment section down below if you visited her or which carriers you still have left to visit. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. Really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and the channel. Thanks for watching.